And they didn't expect him to become president, so I don't know if he had a full 2 terms or not, but for some reason, he thought he shouldn't do more than Washington did. Washington was the example. Washington, after 2 terms, went home. Maybe Washington wanted to go home, you know, maybe, you know. But he felt that he made a promise that he shouldn't go for a 3rd term. So he left the presidency at such a young age, when a lot of other men would have just been beginning. I think he was not only was he the youngest president, I think. I don't know if that's been beaten by people like Kennedy, but I don't think it has. But he was also the youngest retiree from the presidency. You know, he was George Bush Jr., who seems young to us. I don't even think he was as old as, I think he was older than Teddy Roosevelt was when he began his presidency, when Roosevelt left his presidency, if you understand. Roosevelt was young, younger than Bush was when he began his presidency, and we think of Bush as rather young. That's how young he was. Well, he put this man Taft in, and I think the year was 1908 or something like that, after 8 years had gone by, and he was so popular, Roosevelt, that he could have easily won a 3rd term. And then Taft turned out to be a very conservative, do-nothing, poor president, someone who betrayed all of Roosevelt's programs and, you know, cooperated with the trusts and all this sort of thing. And Roosevelt was horrified. He went over travel, and then he came back, and he was so angry he ran against Taft in 1912. And because he split the party, he actually got more votes than Taft, because the party didn't like Roosevelt, I mean, any more than the party likes McCain now. The Republican Party didn't like Roosevelt. They didn't like. They thought he was too progressive. He had this party called the Bull Moose Party, and plus someone shot him, and he almost died. He was, you know, he was an inch away from death, a little, you know, and so on. So he made it possible by running against this Taft for Wilson to get in, and then Wilson tempered and tempered and tempered on the First World War, and didn't, you know, it took him years and years and years to finally make the decision to send the American troops over in 1917 and so on. That's 5 years into his presidency, etc., the 2nd term. And Roosevelt was just horrified. And then, you know, apparently I think the next election was 1920. If he had run in 1920, which he could and would have done, he would have easily won. Well, I assure you, first of all, Teddy Roosevelt would not have allowed the First World War to occur. He was involved in the peace between the Japanese and the Russians. He believed in the big stick policy. There would have been no First World War with an American Navy out there doing the kind of things that he wanted it to do. And we wouldn't have gotten into the scenario for the Second World War. And we wouldn't have had a Holocaust. We wouldn't have had a Holocaust. Because the Second World War, they blamed everything on the Jews. The Nazis came to power after the Treaty of Versailles and thought they'd got a raw deal, and the Jews became the scapegoat and the enemies and so on. This is something which we read. Even the First World War wouldn't have happened. But even if the First World War did happen, if Roosevelt had come in 1920, no Hitler would have been able to rise like that. But you say, what happened to him? Well, he went away on a trip to the Amazon. After he was just one of these crazy guys who liked adventure and, you know, to challenge his masculinity. He went up the Amazon and he almost died. He got all kinds of terrible sicknesses. He destroyed his health. And then to top it all off, his favorite son, a man called Quentin Roosevelt, died in the very end of the First World War. He was a pilot. He'd gone, you know, in the American Air Force. He was a pilot. He loved this boy, and he was shot down and killed in late 1918. And Roosevelt didn't survive him by many months because he blamed himself for this, you know, glorifying these things and this boy's death. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. And I'll tell you one last story about the whole thing, since I'm on this subject and all of what could have been. The reason I think it's so important is the Holocaust. The Holocaust. What could have stopped the Holocaust? You know, peace in our time. What's the British Prime Minister's name that came back with that slogan when he spoke to Herr Hitler? What was his name? Huh? You know, the British Prime Minister. That was his name. No, Churchill was.
I don't know what, it's the only one I know.
No, Churchill was against Hitler.
Thatcher. No, I'm kidding.
This is way back in 1939.
We had Chamberlain over here.
Chamberlain, that's the one. Chamberlain's the one, yeah, thanks. You know, my brain is going to mush in certain areas, but not to all the areas. So, what a lot of people don't know is that Theodore Roosevelt Jr., another one of his sons, was a general in the American Army on D-Day, and he was the one who landed on the beach in D-Day and organized the assault that broke through the German defenses on the beach at D-Day. He was on the beach, literally on the beach. And he got a heart attack 3 weeks after the landing and died on the beaches of Normandy. That's another tragedy in the Roosevelt family. So that's just so interesting if you're interested in history to look into these things. So it's a tragic story, the Theodore Roosevelt. For this country, in many ways, because you see people idolize Wilson, but Wilson was a horrendous racist. You know, he loved this idea of you know, 12 points and, you know, I forget all the things he was marketing overseas and his, you know, different things about the League of Nations, and then he could even get it passed in this country. But he was a Southern Democrat. He was a Southerner who was president of Princeton University, and he actually didn't think the blacks should flourish. He was against blacks flourishing in the United States. And he reintroduced, or he actually introduced segregation into the American Army. It was he that put segregation into the American Army. You know, something that we, you know, had to spend another 30, 40 years to get rid of. And it was because he was a Southerner. He was really into the Southern cause. And he'd gone north and got an education and became, you know, academic and so on, but he never gave up his Southern sympathies. And the black Afro-American, however you want to refer to that particular question, was something that he was very, very negative on. And to my mind, that's a tragedy. Wilson gets a lot of credit, but I would give him very little credit given the other parts of his character and the things that he did here. And of course, the mess of the League of Nations certainly brought Hitler on. It wasn't totally his fault, but in any case. All right, so we're talking about accidental things that cause things to happen. So we're in a situation where, you know, we have the Jewish people, as far as other Jewish communities go, you know, Hitler really did, unfortunately, an incredibly effective job.